Princess Era stood at the large window of her royal chambers. The 3 moons of Luminaria shone brightly in the night sky. She sighed and tapped her long, blue fingers against the glass. Today was her 200th birthday, and she was bored. "Your Highness, the court waits to present your gifts," said Dury, her chief attendant. Era turned, her silver eyes showing no excitement. More jewels? More art? More singing plants? She walked to her floating chair. "I have everything in the galaxy." Dury bowed low. "The High Council wishes to please you, Princess. Then tell them I want something new." Era sat down, her shimmering robes flowing around her tall, thin body. "Something no other noble has." "What would please you, Your Highness?" Era thought for a moment. "The scouts found a new planet recently, yes. The one with the small, furry creatures that walk on 2 legs." "Earth," Dury said, his voice careful. "The beings are called humans. They are primitive but dangerous, Your Highness." "Perfect." Era clapped her hands. "I want one. But Princess, they are not yet approved for collection. They are still being studied." "I don't care." Era waved her hand. "I want one for my birthday. A special one. Not weak or simple. I want one that will be interesting." Dury wanted to argue but knew better. When Princess Era wanted something, she got it. "Yes, Your Highness. I will send the best scouts." June chopped wood outside his small cabin in the mountains. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool air. He liked the simple work. It helped him forget the wars, the missions, the things he had seen and done as a soldier. 5 years since he left the Special Forces. 5 years of peace and quiet. Just him and the mountains. No people. No orders. No killing. He stopped to drink water and looked up at the stars. The night was clear and beautiful. Then he saw a strange light moving across the sky, too fast for a plane, too controlled for a meteor. June frowned. His old training kicked in. Something wasn't right. He went inside his cabin and grabbed his rifle. Probably nothing, but better safe than sorry. He checked that it was loaded and stepped back outside. The light was gone, but now there was a strange humming sound. It seemed to come from all directions at once. June turned slowly, scanning the trees around his cabin. "Who's there?" he called. "This is private property." The humming grew louder. The air felt heavy, like before a storm. His skin tingled. Then he saw them. 3 tall figures at the edge of the clearing. They were at least 7 feet tall with blue skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Their eyes were large and silver. They wore what looked like armor made of liquid metal. Not human. Definitely not human. June raised his rifle. "Stay back." The figures didn't speak. One raised a small device. A beam of blue light shot out and hit June's rifle. The metal became hot instantly. He dropped it with a curse. "What do you want?" June backed toward his cabin. The aliens moved forward, impossibly fast. June ran for the door, but a net of glowing energy fell over him. He struggled against it, but the more he fought, the tighter it became. One of the aliens spoke, the words strange and musical. Another nodded and stepped forward, holding a small silver rod. It touched June's neck. A cold feeling spread through his body. His limbs grew heavy. His thoughts became slow and foggy. "No," he tried to say, but his mouth wouldn't work. As darkness took him, June heard one of the aliens speak again. This time, somehow, he understood the words. "The princess will be pleased with this specimen. It has spirit." Princess Era clapped her hands with delight as the scouts returned. Their ship landed on her private dock at the palace. "You found one," she said, watching as they carried the sleeping human out. "Yes, Your Highness." The lead scout bowed. "A male, strong and clever. He lives alone, far from others of his kind." Era walked around the unconscious human, studying him with curiosity. He was much smaller than her people, but his body looked solid and powerful. "He is perfect," she said. Have him placed in the new habitat. I want to see him when he wakes up." Dury looked worried. "Your Highness, remember these creatures are unpredictable." Era smiled. "That's why I wanted one, Dury. I'm tired of predictable pets." June woke up slowly. His head hurt. His mouth was dry. He kept his eyes closed and stayed still, just listening. Old habits from his military days. Something was wrong. The air smelled different, clean, but with a strange sweet smell he did not know. The ground under him felt soft, like grass, but not quite right. He heard the sound of water nearby. Birds. No, not birds. Something that made sounds like birds, but different. June opened his eyes a tiny bit. Bright light made him squint. He was lying on a green field. Trees stood nearby. The sky above was blue, but it was all wrong. The grass was too perfect, all the same height. The trees had no bark, just smooth trunks in light purple. The sky seemed to end about 100 feet up, meeting balls. He sat up slowly. He was in a large room made to look like outdoors. A fake earth. "Our guest is awake," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere. June jumped to his feet, looking around for the speaker. "Can you understand me, human?" the voice asked. It was female, light and musical. "Who are you? Where am I?" Joan demanded. A laugh, like small bells. "I am Princess Era of the Stellar Imperium. You are in my palace on Luminaria. And you are my new pet." June's face hardened. "I am not a pet. I am a human being. My name is June." "June," Era said, testing the word. "A simple name for a complex creature. Do you like your habitat? My designers worked hard to make it like your home world." June looked around at the fake nature. The habitat was large, maybe 200 feet across. A small stream ran through it. There was a cave-like shelter on one side with a bed and other furniture. The walls curved up to meet at the top, forming a dome. "It's a cage," he said simply. "A beautiful cage," Era corrected. "Much nicer than where you lived before. Are you hungry? There is food in the shelter." June walked to the edge of the habitat. The wall looked like glass, but when he touched it, it felt warm and slightly soft. "You cannot break it," Era said. "It is made to contain creatures much stronger than humans." "Why am I here?" June asked. "To entertain me. To be studied. To be admired." Era's voice became excited. "You are the first human in the Imperial collection. You should be honored." June said nothing. He walked around the edge of the habitat, testing the wall every few steps. "Most new pets cry or beg," Era observed. "You are very calm." "I've been in worse places," June said. He was thinking, planning, looking for weaknesses. The invisible speaker laughed again. "I chose well. You are interesting, June." Princess Era sat in her private viewing room, watching the human on large screens. Her chief attendant, Dury, stood nearby, looking worried. "Your Highness, I must caution you. This human does not act like other species we have collected. He is not afraid. That's what makes him perfect," Era said. She touched a screen, zooming in on June's face. "Look at his eyes, Dury. He is thinking, planning. My other pets just accept their fate. That is why humans are classified as potential threat species, Princess. They do not accept. They resist." Era waved her hand dismissively. "The habitat is secure. And I am learning so much already." She leaned forward, fascinated. He is testing every inch of the enclosure. Methodical. Intelligent. On the screen, Jun had found the water system. He was studying how it worked, tracing pipes with his fingers. "The Imperial Science Council reports that humans are very adaptable," Dury said. "They call them evolutionary opportunists. They find ways to use anything to their advantage. Like the ancient worms of our legends," Era said with a smile. "Clever and dangerous, but beautiful to watch. Those legends do not end well for the worm tamers, Your Highness." Era turned to her attendant, her silver eyes flashing. "Are you saying I cannot handle one small human?" Dury bowed low. "Of course not, Princess. I merely suggest caution. I did not become the youngest member of the imperial court by being cautious, Dury." Era turned back to the screens. "I will tame this savage worm, and the court will be amazed." On the screen, Jun had found a small panel hidden in the habitat. It controlled the light cycle. He smiled slightly as he studied it. "See," Era said, pointing. "He smiles. He is beginning to enjoy his new home." Dury looked at the human's face and was not so sure. That was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of discovery. 3 days passed. June ate the food provided in his habitat. It looked like Earth food, fruits, bread, meat, but tasted slightly different. He slept in the shelter, exercised daily, and continued to study his cage. He found 5 hidden panels that controlled different parts of the habitat: lights, temperature, water flow, food delivery, and one that seemed to adjust the air. He carefully put each panel back as he found it. Better if they didn't know what he knew. On the 4th day, something changed. A section of the wall slid open. Princess Era walked in. June had only heard her voice before. Now he saw her clearly. She was tall, at least 7 feet, with blue skin that seemed to glow faintly. Her eyes were large and silver with no pupils. She had no hair, but a crest of small, shimmering scales ran from her forehead back over her head. Her 4-fingered hands were long and delicate. She wore flowing robes of a material that changed color as she moved, like oil on water. She carried no weapons that June could see. June stayed where he was, sitting by the stream. He didn't stand up. "You do not bow to royalty?" Era asked, sounding amused rather than angry. "We don't have royalty where I come from," June said simply. "How strange." Era walked closer, studying him. "No one to rule over you. We rule ourselves." Era laughed. "No wonder your kind fights so much. Our scouts report your planet is always at war somewhere." Jun said nothing to this. It was sadly true. "I have decided to learn your language properly," Era said, sitting down near him. She moved gracefully despite her height. "I could put a translator in your brain, but that would be too easy." "Thank you for not putting things in my brain," Jun said dryly. Era tilted her head. Was that humor? Fascinating. She pointed to the stream. "What do you call this in your language?" June considered refusing to answer, but decided cooperation might be useful. "Water, stream. Water, stream." Hera repeated perfectly. She pointed to the grass. "And this. Grass." June then pointed to himself. "Human. June. Not pet." Hera smiled, showing teeth that were perfectly white and slightly pointed. "Clever, but still my pet, June." For an hour, they went back and forth. Hera was a quick learner. By the end, she could form basic sentences in English. June also learned about her world. Luminaria was the capital of a vast empire that spanned many star systems. Hera was a princess of the royal house, over 200 years old but still young for her kind. "Why do you keep pets from other worlds?" June asked. "To study, to enjoy." Hera gestured around. "All noble houses have collections. Mine is the best." "Where are the others?" "Other pets." "In their own habitats. Some together, some alone." Hera studied him. "Would you like company? Another human, perhaps?" "No," June said quickly. He didn't want another person trapped here because of him. "I thought not. You lived alone on Earth." Hera stood up. "Our session is done for today." As she walked to the wall, June called out, "Wait, I have one more question." Hera turned. "Yes. What did your attendant mean about worms? I heard him say that word when I was brought here." Surprise showed on Hera's face. "You understood our language then. Impressive. Just that word. Worm. What does it mean?" Era seemed to consider whether to answer. In our ancient times, before we reached the stars, there were creatures called worms. Powerful, unpredictable. Some of our ancestors tried to tame them as weapons or companions. She smiled. Most were eaten for their trouble. What happened to these worms? We killed them all, of course. Era's silver eyes gleamed. But some of us still admire what they were. Wild, free, dangerous. She studied June. Your kind reminds me of them. The wall opened and Era left. The opening sealed seamlessly behind her. June sat thinking about what he had learned. The aliens saw humans as dangerous animals, like the worms they had destroyed. But they had made a mistake bringing him here. The worms were gone. Humans were not. 2 weeks passed. Princess Era visited June daily. She learned his language quickly. June pretended to enjoy their talks. He smiled more. He asked questions about her world. He acted like he was accepting his new life. But at night, he worked on his plan. From the food packages, he collected small metal pieces. From the stream, he gathered special stones that sparked when struck together. From the trees, he took sap that burned slowly. Era never noticed these small things missing. She was too busy showing off her new pet to visitors who watched from behind the invisible walls. Today is special, June, Era announced as she entered the habitat one morning. The High Court will visit to see you, the first human in the Imperial collection. June nodded. I will behave well for you, Princess. His voice was humble, but his eyes were sharp. Good. I knew you would understand eventually. Era seemed pleased. Many important nobles will come, even my father's advisor. I am honored, June said with a small bow. Inside, he thought. Perfect. That afternoon, the habitat was surrounded by tall, blue-skinned aliens in rich clothes. They stared at June like he was an animal in a zoo, which, June thought, was exactly what he was to them. Era stood proudly beside him. As you can see, the human has adapted well. June, show them how you use tools. Like a trained dog, June demonstrated using the simple tools he was allowed. A cup, a knife for food, a stick for reaching high fruit. Impressive dexterity, said one noble. But so small, said another. How do they defend themselves without natural weapons? They make weapons, Era explained. Their planet is full of them. But June is peaceful now, fully tamed. June smiled at this. It was time. Would your highness like me to show them how humans sing? He asked politely. Era clapped her hands. Yes, I've heard him practice. It's quite pleasing. June walked to the center of the habitat. The nobles gathered closer to watch. He took a deep breath and began to sing an old earth song, low and deep. As he sang, his hands moved slowly to his pockets. No one noticed. They were watching his face, listening to his voice. In one quick motion, June pulled out his homemade fire starter. He struck the stones together near the sap-covered sticks hidden in his sleeve. Fire exploded in his hands. The aliens jumped back in shock. Fire was rare on their world. June threw the burning sticks at the ceiling where he had spread more sap. Flames raced across the top of the habitat. Smoke filled the air. Alarms blared. Era shouted orders. Guards ran in confusion. In the chaos, June ran to the hidden panel that controlled the habitat door. He had studied how Era opened it. 3 quick taps, then slide left. The door slid open. June ran through. He found himself in a long hallway with doors on both sides. Behind him, he heard Era shouting, "Close all exits. The human has escaped." June ran. His heart pounded. Freedom was close. He turned a corner and saw a large window. Outside was a garden with strange purple plants and a pink sky. Real sky, not a fake one. Guards appeared at both ends of the hallway. They carried silver rods like the ones used to capture him on Earth. June looked around desperately. There was a small air vent in the wall. He pulled off the cover and tried to squeeze through. Too small. The guards moved closer, silver rods raised. "Stop," came Era's voice. The guards froze. She walked forward, her silver eyes fixed on June. She did not look angry. Instead, she looked impressed. "No pet has ever escaped their habitat before," she said. "You are truly like the ancient worms." "I am not a pet," June said firmly. "I am a human being." "Yes," Era said softly. "I begin to see that now." She turned to the guards. "Take him back to the habitat. Repair the damage." Then to June. "We will talk tomorrow. Things will be different." As the guards surrounded him, June knew he had lost this battle. But something had changed. He saw respect in Era's eyes where before there had been only curiosity. The escape had failed, but the rebellion had just begun. June sat in his rebuilt habitat. The walls were the same, but now there were no hidden panels. The stream was the same, but now it ran straighter. Everything was clean and fixed after the fire. He waited. It had been 2 days since his escape attempt. Food came regularly through a new opening in the wall, but no one had spoken to him. On the 3rd day, the main door opened. Princess Era walked in. She wore simpler clothes today, not the fancy robes from before. She carried a small silver box. June stayed seated on a rock by the stream. He did not stand. "Your escape attempt caused quite a stir," Era said. "The court has not talked of anything else." "I'm sorry I didn't provide a bigger show," June said. Era laughed. "You still have your sharp tongue." "Good." She sat on a rock across from him. "I have been thinking about our situation." "Our situation? You mean my imprisonment?" "Yes," Era said simply. "That is what it is to you, isn't it? No matter how beautiful the cage." June was surprised by her admission. He studied her face. Something had changed. "I have read reports about humans," Era continued. "Your kind values freedom above comfort, above safety, even above life sometimes." "Yes." This puzzled me, but now I understand a little more. She opened the silver box. Inside was a small device that looked like a button. "This is a translator. It would let you understand our language fully." "You said you wouldn't put anything in my brain," June said, tensing. "It does not go in your brain. It attaches here." She touched her throat. "It reads your language center through your skin." June relaxed slightly. "Why give me this now?" "Because I wish to make a bargain with you, June." "What kind of bargain can exist between a captor and a prisoner?" Era's silver eyes held his gaze. "I propose a new arrangement. Not pet and owner, not prisoner and captor, but companion and guide." June laughed without humor. "Companion, I am still in a cage. The cage can open, if I trust you not to run." Era leaned forward. "And if you trust me not to hunt you." June was silent for a moment. "What exactly are you offering?" "You will accompany me in the palace, learn about our world. In return, you teach me about humans." She paused. "And eventually, if all goes well, we discuss your return home." "Return home?" June couldn't hide his surprise. "You would let me go?" "Perhaps. In time." Era placed the translator on the rock between them. "But first, we learn to trust each other." June thought carefully. This could be a trick, but it was also a chance to learn more about these aliens, their technology, their weaknesses. "I have conditions," he said finally. Era raised what would have been eyebrows if she had any. "You wish to bargain with a princess?" "Yes, I do." June counted on his fingers. "First, I want real clothes, not these hospital-like things. Second, I want to be able to exercise properly, not just in this small space. Third, I want information, books, videos, whatever you have about your world." "Those seem reasonable," Era said. "Anything else?" "Yes, I want your word, as a princess, that you will treat me with dignity. Not as a pet, not as a lesser being, as a person." Era was quiet for a long moment. "You ask much, human." You took much when you stole me from my home, Jun replied evenly. Another long silence. Then Era nodded. Very well. I give you my word, as Princess Era of the Royal House of Luminaria. You will be treated with dignity as a person, not as a pet. She held out her four-fingered hand. Do we have a bargain? Jun looked at her hand, then at her face. He saw something new there. Not the look of an owner to a pet, but perhaps respect. He reached out and took her hand. It was warm and smooth. We have a bargain, Princess. But know this, if you break your word, I will escape again. And next time, I won't fail. Era smiled, showing her pointed teeth. I would expect nothing less from a worm tamer's companion. The habitat door opened wide behind her. Beyond it lay the palace, and all its secrets. The palace was huge. Jun walked beside Princess Era, through halls with ceilings so high he could barely see them. The walls were made of a material like marble, but with colors that shifted slowly. The floors were smooth and cool under his new boots. Era had kept her word. Jun now wore clothes made of comfortable black material, similar to what the palace guards wore, but without any rank marks. The translator on his neck worked perfectly. He could understand everything the aliens said, and they said a lot about him. The princess brings her pet to court, whispered one blue-skinned noble to another as they passed. It walks beside her, not behind. How strange, said another. Jun ignored them. He was busy studying everything. Doors, windows, guard positions. Still planning, always planning. The High Court meets today. Era explained as they walked. All the noble houses will be there. My father wishes me to present you. Present me. Like a prize? Jun asked. No, like a diplomatic guest. Era glanced at him. This is unusual, Jun. No other species has been treated this way so soon after discovery. Jun nodded. I understand. I'll behave. Era smiled slightly. Somehow, that does not reassure me. They entered a massive round chamber. Hundreds of aliens sat in rising circles, like a theater. At the front was a platform with 3 large chairs. 2 were filled with aliens wearing elaborate headdresses. The third was empty. My parents, Era said quietly. The Emperor and Empress. All eyes turned to watch as Era and Jun walked down the central aisle. The aliens whispered to each other. Some looked angry. Some looked curious. None looked friendly. Jun kept his face calm. He had been in hostile territory before. As a soldier, this was just another mission. Era stopped before the platform and bowed low. Jun followed her example. Rise, daughter, said the Emperor, his voice deep and powerful. Is this the human that caused such excitement at your collection showing? Yes, father. This is Jun. Era stood straight. He is here as my companion, not as a pet. Murmurs ran through the crowd. The Empress leaned forward. Companion, a primitive species that only reached space travel a few cycles ago. Jun felt his jaw tighten but kept silent. Humans are young but intelligent, Era said. I believe we can learn from each other. A tall alien stepped forward from the side of the chamber. He wore dark green robes and had a scar across his face. Your Majesties, if I may speak, he said with a bow. Speak, Lord Tahoe, said the Emperor. Tahoe pointed at Jun. This creature escaped its habitat. It caused a fire. It could have harmed our princess. And now it walks free in our palace. Era started to answer, but Jun spoke first. I have a name, he said clearly. I am Jun, and I am not an it. The court fell silent in shock. A non-royal had spoken without permission. Lord Tahoe's face darkened. The creature dares to speak in the High Court. Let him speak, said the Emperor, raising his hand. He looked at Jun with interest. Say what you wish, human. Jun bowed again. Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wish to say that Princess Era has shown me great respect. I give the same respect in return. I mean no harm to her or to your people. The court watched in silent surprise. No pet had ever addressed the Emperor before. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the chamber. A section of the ceiling crashed down near the Emperor. Smoke filled the air. "Assassins!" someone shouted. Guards rushed forward, but they were too slow. A dark figure dropped from the ceiling, heading straight for Era. Without thinking, Jun moved. His military training took over. He pushed Era aside and faced the attacker. The alien was fast, with a blade in each hand. But Jun had fought in 3 wars. He dodged the first strike, blocked the second, and countered with a hard punch to what he hoped was a vulnerable spot. The alien doubled over. Guards surrounded them, capturing the attacker. More guards rushed the royal family to safety. When the chaos settled, Jun stood in the center of the chamber, breathing hard. The court stared at him in silence. Then Lord Tejo spoke again. The human protected the princess. It placed itself in danger for her. He corrected the Emperor, looking at Jun with new eyes. His name is Jun. A month passed. After saving Princess Era from the assassin, Jun's position changed. He was no longer seen as just a pet or even a companion. The Emperor gave him official status as Era's protector. Jun now had his own room in the palace. He trained with the royal guards each day. He learned about Luminarian technology, culture, and history. Princess Era taught him, and he taught her about Earth. They sat together in the royal garden one morning, watching the 3 moons that were visible even in daylight. "Your fighting skills are impressive," Era said. "The head guard wants you to teach our soldiers." Jun smiled. "Humans are good at fighting. It's not something to be proud of." "It saved my life," Era reminded him. Before Jun could answer, a loud alarm sounded throughout the palace. Guards ran past the garden entrance. Era stood quickly. "That's the Imperial alert," she said, her silver eyes wide. "We must go to the council chamber." They hurried through the palace. Nobles and staff ran in all directions. Fear showed on every blue face. The council chamber was filled with important aliens when they arrived. The Emperor and Empress sat at the head table. Military officers stood around a large 3D map in the center of the room. "What's happening?" Era asked as they entered. One of the officers looked up. "The Void Collective has crossed the outer defense line. 3 colony worlds are already lost." "The Void Collective?" Jun asked quietly. Era's face was grim. "Our ancient enemy, a hive mind species that absorbs the knowledge and biology of those it conquers." The Emperor spoke. "Show us the battle recordings." A large screen appeared in the air. It showed Luminarian ships fighting against strange dark vessels that seemed to change shape. The alien ships moved in ways that made no sense, splitting apart and coming back together, appearing where they shouldn't be. "Our forces can't predict their attack patterns," said a military commander. "They change tactics constantly. We've lost 40% of the fleet." Jun studied the recordings carefully. Something about the enemy movements looked familiar. "May I speak?" he asked. The Emperor nodded. "Speak, Jun of Earth." Jun pointed to the screen. "These movements, they're like Earth guerrilla tactics. They're not random. They're designed to confuse and divide your forces." The military commander looked doubtful. "How would you know this, human?" "I was a soldier," Jun said. "I fought in wars using these same tactics against stronger enemies." The room was quiet. Then Era spoke up. "Let him explain, Commander. We need any help we can get." Jun walked to the 3D map. "Your ships always move in set formations, correct?" "Yes. Our battle doctrine is based on perfect coordination." "That's your weakness," Jun said. "The Void Collective is exploiting it. They break your formations, isolate your ships, then destroy them one by one." He pointed to different areas on the map. On Earth, smaller forces defeated larger armies using these exact methods. Vietnam, Afghanistan, the Amazon conflict. The commander looked skeptical. "And how would we counter such tactics?" Stop fighting as a perfect unit. Become unpredictable yourselves. June moved some ship markers on the map. Break into smaller groups. Change directions randomly. Set traps. Fight like savages, you mean, said Lord Teo from across the room. Fight like survivors, June corrected. Your civilization has known peace for so long that you've forgotten how to face an enemy that doesn't play by your rules. The Emperor studied June carefully. Can you help plan our defense, human? June looked around the room. These aliens had taken him from his home, kept him as a pet, but now they faced extinction. Yes, he said finally. I can help. Era touched his arm. Thank you, June. Don't thank me yet, he said quietly. To defeat the Void Collective, your people will need to learn how to think like humans, like warriors, like the Wyrms you once feared. The Emperor stood. So be it. June of Earth will advise our military council. He looked around the room. The human status is now changed. He is no longer a protector only, but an ally. Lord Tejo stepped forward. Your Majesty, with respect, can we trust our survival to a primitive species? We already trust our princess's life to him, the Emperor replied. Now we will trust his warrior's mind as well. June looked at Era. Her silver eyes held a mixture of fear and hope. I won't let you down, he promised her. I know, she said. After all, no one tames a worm. They can only earn its loyalty. For 2 weeks, June worked with the Luminarian military. He taught them Earth battle tactics. He showed them how to fight like savages. Some listened, others did not. The Void Collective kept advancing. 5 more worlds fell. The Luminarian forces fought better now, but it was not enough. June sat in the war room with Princess Era and the military commanders. The 3D map showed the enemy getting closer to the home system. We need more than new tactics, June said. We need something the Void Collective has never seen before. What do you suggest? Asked the head commander. June took a deep breath. Humans. The room went silent. Explain, said the Emperor from the doorway. He had just entered the room. Everyone stood and bowed. June continued when the Emperor sat down. Your forces fight better now, but they are still too predictable, too careful. June pointed to the map. Humans are naturally unpredictable. We think differently. We take risks no logical species would try. You want us to bring more humans here? Asked Lord Tayo. More savage worms. Yes, said June simply. An alliance between our worlds. The commanders talked all at once. Some angry, some thoughtful. Silence, ordered the Emperor. He looked at June. How would this work? Humans do not even know about life beyond their world. Some do, said June. Our governments have suspected for years. We need to make official contact. Offer an alliance. Technology in exchange for military help. Giving primitive beings advanced technology. Lord Tejo stood up. They would use it against us. Not if we need each other to survive, June argued. The Void Collective won't stop at your empire. Earth would be next. Princess Era had been quiet. Now she spoke. I believe June is right. I have studied humans through him. They are fierce fighters, but also loyal allies. The Emperor thought for a long time. The room was silent. We have lost half our outer colonies, he said finally. Our traditional ways are failing. Perhaps it is time for a new approach. He looked at June. How would we begin this alliance? Send me back to Earth, June said, with Princess Era as your representative. We will contact our leaders, show them the truth, and offer your friendship. More arguments broke out. The idea of a royal princess going to a primitive world shocked many commanders. I will go, Era said firmly. I have studied Earth through June. I know their customs. The Emperor looked at his daughter with concern. It could be dangerous. I will have June to protect me, she said, as he has done before. After more debate, the decision was made. A small ship would take June and Princess Era to Earth. They would make first contact with human leaders and propose an alliance against the Void Collective. 2 days later, Jun stood in the royal hangar beside a sleek silver ship. He wore his original Earth clothes, cleaned and repaired. Princess Era wore simple robes that would not look too strange on Earth. "Are you happy to be going home?" Era asked as they prepared to board. Jun looked at her. "I'm happy to help save both our worlds." "You've changed since we captured you," she said. "So have you," he replied. "You no longer see humans as pets." "No, I see you as equals. Different, but equal." The Emperor approached with his guards. "The fate of our worlds rests with you both." Jun bowed. "We won't fail, Your Majesty." "My daughter will be in your world now," the Emperor said. "She will be the alien there. Keep her safe, Jun of Earth." "With my life," Jun promised. Princess Era said goodbye to her parents. Then she and Jun boarded the ship. As the doors closed, she looked nervous for the first time. "What will your people think of me?" she asked. "They'll be shocked, afraid, amazed," Jun said honestly. "Just like I was. But they'll listen." The ship rose smoothly and shot into space. Jun watched as Luminaria grew smaller below them. "From pet to diplomat," he said with a small smile. "Quite a promotion." Era smiled too. "And I went from owner to student. The universe has a strange sense of humor." The ship accelerated to faster than light speed. Earth was waiting, unaware that its greatest challenge and opportunity was on the way. 6 months passed. Earth was in shock, but adapting. The arrival of Princess Era and Jun had changed everything. Humans now knew they were not alone in the universe. World leaders had come together quickly when they saw the threat. The Void Collective had already destroyed a human research station at the edge of the solar system. Earth needed the Luminarian alliance. Now, a combined fleet of human and Luminarian ships approached the central node of the Void Collective. This was the final mission, the heart of the enemy. Jun stood on the bridge of the lead ship. He wore a special combat suit that mixed human and Luminarian technology. Princess Era stood beside him. She had not left his side during the entire war. "The strike team is ready," said the human commander, Han. "And our ships are in position," added the Luminarian captain, Saul. Jun nodded. "Then we proceed with the plan." The plan was simple but dangerous. While the fleet engaged the Void Collective's outer defenses, a small team would enter the central node and plant a special weapon. The weapon combined Earth nuclear technology with Luminarian energy fields in a way the Void Collective had never encountered. "I should lead the strike team," Jun said. Era shook her head. "We already decided. Commander Han will lead. You are needed here to coordinate." "Plans change," Jun said. "I know the Void Collective's movements better than anyone. I've studied them for months." "Then I'm coming with you," Era said firmly. "Princess, it's too dangerous," protested Captain Saul. "I am not just a princess anymore," Era replied. "I am an ambassador and a warrior now. My place is with the strike team." Jun knew that look in her silver eyes. She would not be changed. "Together then," he agreed. The battle was chaotic. The combined fleet attacked from multiple directions, using the unpredictable tactics Jun had taught them. The Void Collective struggled to respond. In the confusion, a small ship slipped through their defenses. It carried Jun, Era, and 8 soldiers, 4 human and 4 Luminarian. They docked at a service port on the massive central node. The team moved through dark corridors, fighting strange drone creatures that guarded the node. "The core should be ahead," Jun said, checking the scanner. 400 meters. "Movement behind us," reported a human soldier. "Lots of it." "We need to split up," Jun decided. "Half the team holds them off. Half continues to the core." Era touched his arm. "I'm staying with you." They moved forward, leaving 4 soldiers to guard their escape route. The corridors became narrower. Strange organic material covered the walls, pulsing with dim light. The Void Collective is aware of us, Era said. It's concentrating its forces. They reached a large chamber. In the center floated a dark, shifting mass, the control brain of the Void Collective. Around it moved dozens of drone creatures. We need to get the weapon close to the brain, Jun said, holding the device they had brought. Within 10 meters. There are too many guards, said a Luminarian soldier. Jun studied the room. His human instincts looked for patterns, weaknesses. There, he pointed. The drones move in a cycle. There's a 5-second gap on the left side. That's not enough time, said a human soldier. It is if we give them something else to focus on, Jun said. He looked at Ara, ready to be unpredictable, princess. She smiled. I learned from the best. They created a distraction. The human soldiers fired at the right side of the room. The Luminarians used their energy weapons on the ceiling. In the chaos, Jun and Ara slipped around the left side. The drones swarmed toward the soldiers. Jun and Ara ran for the brain. They were almost there when a drone spotted them. It flew at Ara, its sharp limbs extended. Jun pushed her aside and took the hit. Pain flared in his shoulder, but he kept moving. Now, he shouted. Ara activated her energy shield, covering them both. Jun threw the weapon. It landed directly under the brain and began to pulse with light. Everyone out. Jun yelled into his communicator. 10 seconds to detonation. They ran for the exit. Drones attacked from all sides. Humans and Luminarians fought together, covering each other's retreats. They reached their ship just as the explosion began. The central node shuddered. The ship broke free as waves of energy tore through the Void Collective structure. From the fleet, they watched as the central node collapsed. Without its brain, the Void Collective ships became disorganized. The combined fleet moved in to finish the battle. We did it, Era said softly. She treated Jun's wound as they watched the victory unfold. Humans and Luminarians together, Jun said. Your people's technology and our savage instincts. Not savage, Era corrected. Natural. Pure. The way my people were before we became too civilized for our own good. Jun looked at her. So what happens now, princess? Back to your world as a hero. Era took his hand. Our worlds are connected now. We need ambassadors who understand both sides. A former pet and his former owner. Jun smiled. No, said Ara. 2 equals who tamed each other.